Good afternoon,
Hello there.
Caroline.
Hello.
How the hell are you?
I'm all right.
You're all right, still
Yeah.
breathing like me.
Yeah. It's
I always like people look at me funny, and I can't stop saying it. Like when people go, "Oh, how are you?" and they do the old greeting small talk thing.
yeah.
I don't really like it. I can't do it. I think it's the autism, and my stock response is still breathing, and they look at you a bit funny. you know. But I think that's a very upbeat thing to say. Still breathing. I mean, like, don't you? I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's fine. I mean, I'm all right. It's like here it's really, really hot where I am. And so it's a bit complicated because yeah, sometimes you feel it's difficult to breathe when it's that hot. So
Yeah.
still
Are
breathing
you
is
all right in the heat?
yeah, no, I'm fine. It's just that for example, if I'm working and people can't hear me properly and I have to switch the fan off, for example, air
Oh
conditioning or
God,
something like
yeah.
that, but because of the noise, then it gets a bit stuffy.
And you got
But
a
I don't know
the
what they
background, do
can.
you?
Yeah, I don't know what they can hear because I've got. I think it's really quiet, but it makes a difference when I switch it off. So it's a machine.
Fans interfere. The engines on fans interfere with electronic devices sometimes.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is. It's
So
the.
it maybe
Uh,
comes through. Anyway, what are we gonna? You sent me a thing saying you wanted to talk about something today, so I'm handing over
well, yeah,
all the
I.
reins and the horses to you.
Okay. It's that we talk a lot about conversation and about learning how to speak
Hmm.
and to express ourselves and to be able to say things that other people will understand and feel comfortable about that.
Hmm.
And in fact, I've just been able to help somebody with presentations at work, and she's thrilled, and it went really well, and we're both really happy about that. On the other hand, there are
What do you
also
mean by presentations?
it's work presentations with slides and case studies, and she's a tissue specialist she works for a medical device company and goes to hospitals and works with surgeons.
So
So
did you work on the slides or the
yes,
language?
yes, on the slides and the language because
Oh
by
God,
now.
really?
Yeah, well, I've got a lot of experience, and so I can also indicate points where I think it would be better to say this and not that. And
Right,
she said,
right.
yeah, like it's right, that's true.
Okay.
So both, everything, whatever, and and there are other people who find it really hard to understand. Not some, maybe they studied so much that they can even put words together and say more or less what they want to say, but then they don't
Yeah.
understand the people there who are listening to them because when they answer, it's just another world because they've only studied and they haven't actually had a lot of contact or they don't feel comfortable. I mean, I'm thinking of one person in particular who really wants to she finds it very hard to use her intuition and just let go and see that maybe this guy is saying this, maybe he's saying that. You're not going to understand every single word he says anyway,
Hmm.
ever, and probably not anyway. So I thought it would be nice to talk a little bit about understanding English, spoken English, and how
Hmm.
to get there, how to make sense out of all these words that come out of people's mouths and don't seem to have a beginning and an end. So
Right.
this is the main problem I think that people have. They just don't seem to be able to make sense of what's said. They don't know what's being said. So
Do you know what's funny is that you mentioned this in a message to me, and I read it, and I thought, what's that about? And then I just listened to you describe that, and I kept thinking, what's this about? And
right.
I don't know whether that's my brain. It probably probably my
No,
brain,
no, no. I know
like
that's when.
like
Yeah.
not understanding because it struggles with some things, but it's
Well,
kind of interesting.
but I told you I'm not very clear. So it's me. It's not you. Don't worry.
No, 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 no. It's me, not you. Go on.
No, I mean I can explain it in bits and pieces, like I said I would.
Right. Okay. Go on.
But if you want to say what you wanted to say, then I'm happy to listen.
No. I was just saying, I'm kind of sitting here going, where's this going? What is it about?
Right.
So that's good. That's good.
For example, when we speak, we don't separate our words. They're all attached. One is attached to the next.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it's something that you do naturally, and
everyone does. Yeah, in every language. Yeah.
Exactly. But as a learner, you don't do that. And when I'm talking to people who don't speak English very well, I tend not to do it myself, and I separate my words so they can understand me more easily. And that's not English.
Well, it is. It's just not English as it's spoken by a fluent speaker.
Exactly. Which is what happens in real life. So that's one aspect that needs to be acknowledged.
I'm beginning to get this now. Yeah.
Okay. So that's one thing. Another thing that people can do to help is to learn every new word with the accent in the right place, with the stress in the right place. Every word is made up of syllables. Every word has one syllable that is the most important one. And that needs to be stressed. And if you get the stress in the right place, the person who is listening to you will understand you more easily, and you will understand them when they talk, because you will recognize that that's where it goes and that's what the word means.
Yeah.
And that's really, really important. And another one, there were a few. What did I write to you? There are a few different ways of improving. Well, obviously, if you just listen, if you listen and listen and listen and listen, then you can understand. And if you like, for example, you like a film or you like a series and you watch it in your own language and then you watch it in English without subtitles, you just don't understand very much. But you remember the story and you do it again and again. It's a bit crazy, but you do it again and again until you understand more and more and more, because you see the action, you know what's going on. And that's where context comes into play. Because if you are listening and you know what the context is, then it's much easier to understand what they're probably saying. So
you can decipher stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Make educated guesses.
Exactly. But if you think you don't understand something, and then that one thing that you don't understand blocks you, and you say, I don't understand this, that means I don't understand anything. It's not true.
No, it's not true.
You do understand a lot, but you don't realize what you understand.
Yeah.
So as I told you, I would say, like Judy Thompson, who wrote this book, English is Crazy, explains all of this in great detail and makes it easier to see why it is the way it is. And if you see why it is the way it is, it's a little bit easier.
So what does she say? Why is it the way it is?
Well, it's because, like you said, like we put words together in every language. We put them next to each other and string them along and attach them to each other. So if you can see that and you say it's normal, it's not strange, it's completely normal to do that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is pauses. If you when you're writing, you put commas everywhere.
Yeah.
Or the Italians use a lot of semicolons and colons.
Really? Why is that?
Well, they don't like to put a full stop anywhere. They have lines that go like you have a sentence.
Is there punctuation for that? I'm just making a sign with my hand, with my thumb and my forefinger pushed together, and the hand in an upward motion. Is that? No. There's not, because there should be in Italian, shouldn't there? Really? I mean, come on.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I can't think right now what it is. So
go on. Anyway, sorry.
That one is like, what are you talking about?
Exactly.
Yeah. What? Yeah, that's just a question mark with an exclamation mark as well.
Oh, question mark, exclamation.
So
Okay.
yeah, I put them everywhere. Anyway, so yeah, so when you're speaking, all that, it becomes a pause. And in
Yeah.
fact, we do, when you're thinking, you stop talking, you're thinking. You can't do
Yeah.
everything at once.
Yeah.
And that really, really helps understanding, because when you're listening to people talk, okay, they put all their words together, but it's only a few words and then they stop. And you can notice all these different pauses and they help you understand. This is another idea, another point. And so gradually you can get used to this way of interpreting what you're hearing. So context and intuition, they're very important in being able to decipher what is being said by people who are talking in a very normal way, which is very fast usually. And the other thing is accents. Accents are really confusing sometimes because people speak in a very different way depending on where they live.
Yeah.
So English accents are incredibly varied, and I myself sometimes have trouble understanding very strong accents. Because if you're not familiar with them, if you've got a friend who comes from a certain place, then you get really used to the way they speak. And then you can understand anybody who comes from that place. But you can't necessarily know people from all over the world. And people do speak very differently. I mean, England and London in particular is a really good place to meet people from all over the world. And so you can, in fact, get used to a lot of different accents in London without going very far.
Yeah. No, that's true. I think what you've just said about context and running words together that just sound at an early stage of comprehension or acquisition, they sound unintelligible. If people are speaking at normal speed, if they're a fluent speaker, I think, I mean, going right back to the start, when you said speaking slowly and enunciating and stuff like that, more clearly, that's fine. That's just aiding understanding and communication, especially with someone who's at a lower level of oral comprehension. And it's kind of an interesting one because, like, a few years ago, my ex-partner, who's Danish, I tried to acquire some Danish, right? And I thought I'll do it my way, and I formulated some Danish questions and did some reading and stuff like that. I made some little EOT Danish lessons, right? And she's fluent in English, you wouldn't think she was Danish. And I started trying to practice with her, and it was impossible. And it really annoyed me because she was the most unsympathetic listener I've ever come across. Right? And this is the point. It's sympathetic listening, empathetic listening. And English speakers are extraordinarily good at sympathetic listening because we mostly don't speak other languages, right? And everyone's trying to speak our language, our first language. So we become used to adapting our communication to the person we're talking to, who's trying to speak our language. Whereas me talking to my ex in broken Danish, and she's going, no, that's grammatically incorrect. You screwed that up. That's not, no. And I'm like, come on, give me a chance, for God's sake. It's like I'm trying to feel like running away before I've even begun. And that's kind of, that's a good thing. That's what a teacher or a guide, someone doing EOT should do. It's like tailor your language to the level of the person you're talking to, and the speed and the accuracy, enunciation. But then as they pick up the patterns, and this is where pattern recognition comes in, and recording and listening again, then what I do when I'm talking to someone, that I'm working with someone and they start at a very low level. So example is Jane, Chinese girl in 2010, who spoke like a beginner, although she'd done 16 years of formal English language training in China. At the start, I was hugely sympathetic, tailoring my communication to her level of comprehension. And then as she gets going and that starts improving quickly, then I speed up and I start speaking in a more natural way for myself. And also I do this when I'm speaking to people is if I want to push them in a practice conversation, I'll go even faster and see if they can handle it.
Yeah.
And knowing that they've recorded it and they're going to listen again. So if they missed it, this is where context and intuition comes in about, providing a structure around language that might not be fully understood, is you can have a damn good guess at it while you're going. And then that belief that you've understood the meaning gets you through to the next bit you fully understand. And this relates to Krashen's comprehensible input. Do you know about comprehensible input and Krashen's big theory, Stephen Krashen?
Yeah, I know the name, but I don't remember.
Okay, it's in 1970s or 75, something. Krashen. His whole thing is about, there's an optimal level, right? So that to be able to acquire language and learn, i.e. acquire more language and grow in your English speaking ability, or in any language, the input needs to be at a comprehensible level, and that needs to be at about 85%, which leaves 15-20% of your going, I'm not sure about that. But you need that level of comprehension to be able to continue.
Okay.
And the level at which it's at is called I+1, which is me plus a little bit. And if you're working at I+1, where 85% is comprehensible, so they understand it and they can work with it, but only a 10-15% is not comprehensible, then you're going to make progress. And if you work at the right level, I+1, then you're going to keep adding to your acquisition bank, your knowledge base, i.e. the language that you can store, retrieve, and automatize. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So all of this stuff, and I think Judy mentioned, a while back, Judy put in a thread when I put something up, she said, oh, what's the secret, or what, how does it work? Why does it work? And I just wrote pattern recognition. And she went, yeah, bingo. So I'm assuming she does the same. So in her book, she's talking about pattern recognition, probably.
I think it's something that she knows, but I don't think she explains it the way you do.
Right.
It's more broken into.
Yeah, but Judy comes from much more of a structured teaching background than me, I think, and teachers like to teach and break stuff down. And this is why I was thinking about what you were saying, and I was thinking, oh, where's she going? What's this about? Because I'm like, let's say, who am I? I'm like the Liz Truss of ELT. No structure. No, just go for it. And if it doesn't work, don't worry about it, kind of thing. It's like people who come from a formalized ELT or teaching background like to break it all down and then rebuild it, or kind of find the reasons behind the atomized elements of language. Whereas my view is, the materials, the ELT materials, provide the context. They provide 80-odd% comprehension. They scaffold you into that conversation to give you that level of comprehensible input. And then help you through the bits you don't understand, 10, 15, 20% you don't understand, because you've got the context.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And then so my view is, like, if we can get through this conversation and you listen to it again 2 or 3 times, you will acquire the language that you've just studied, and that's borne out. And my job as the person helping someone to practice is just to be nice and help them understand what we're talking about, by, if needs be, tailoring my level of language or explaining something in a simple way without going into massive grammatical structural dissemination, which I'd never do, because I probably don't understand most of the grammatical stuff that people use. So it's all about connection, communication, and having a nice chat around the topic that they've got the structural context of. And that's kind of, so it makes huge sense, what you said. It's kind of, people don't think about this, do they? Do you find people think about how this goes back to the thing, how to practice?
Ah, right. No, they just think it's enough to talk.
Exactly.
Which is crazy. But yeah, I mean, I was just thinking of another thing that Judy does, is she's got this color chart, which helps people understand the pronunciation of different words that they see written down that are pronounced in completely different ways, even if they're spelt partly the same way. And so I adapt that sometimes if I think it's useful, because it's a little bit different in, obviously it's for Canadian English, and for me it's like I'm talking to people from Italy, so the vowels are different, the sounds. But anyway,
no, I think that's useful stuff.
I mean, A in English is it's like EI, A in it, from Italian, starting from Italian, and I is I, A,
but
I.
This is learner driven. This desire to parse stuff, to break it down, or to kind of figure out how it relates to their first language, because of the way language has been taught. If we all just forgot about ELT and CELTAs and deltas and shit like that, right? If we just forgot about it and said we all learnt our first language by hanging out with our mum and dad and our brothers and sisters, we wouldn't worry about any of this stuff. You go back to Chomsky's innate grammar, stuff like that. We have a pattern recognition device that helps us acquire language. It's called our brain, and it does it naturally.
Right.
But the problem comes when people have been taught that they learn a second language a different way to their first language.
Because as an adult, you look at a word and you think, for example, it's like if you think of the color gray, which has the pronunciation A, then it can help you if I tell you, look, this word is pronounced like the color gray, and they say, oh yeah, okay, and they may remember it, they may not, but it's kind of useful. Which is like white. It's it's kind of green, E. It's useful. And I mean,
it's useful if you want to use it.
Yeah, if you've got stuff in front of you that you're reading and you keep on making the same mistake.
But if you keep making the same mistake when you're practicing with someone or helping someone practice, what I tend to do, and I was thinking about this earlier, is if they mispronounce something based on a vowel sound or something like that, I'll either go, sorry, can you say that again? I didn't understand. And then they'll try again and make a mess of it. And then I'll go, oh, you mean boom.
Yeah, and you give them what
And I give them
they don't remember.
the right pronunciation, but it's recorded, and then they can hear
Yeah.
the correction, and they kind of boom, So it's trying to create a memorable little aha moment around a gentle correction,
Yes.
rather than go, right, here's some text, and this is the grammatical, this is the reason why it's this way, and this is Italian. And, like, rather than going into all the long, detailed explanations of theory, just going, sorry, what? Oh, you mean that? Oh, and then saying it,
Yeah.
It's a whole different ballgame.
It is. It's a completely different approach.
Uh,
Much more reassuring.
It's less aggro as well, I find.
Yeah.
I mean, like, everyone can do it. It's like I always hesitated to kind of go, hey, everyone can do this, but they can,
Yes.
because you don't need to have a CELTA, Delta, blah, 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 to be able to help someone acquire their language. You just have to act like their surrogate mother, You really do, don't you? Really?
Yeah,
I mean, like,
nice and encouraging.
exactly. Like, there was a thing. Have I told you about when was it? It was in like 2010, 11, 12. There was a guy, and this was the early days of digital stuff and storage. There was a guy, I might have mentioned this, at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, called Deb Roy. And he and his wife had a baby boy, their first son, right? First kid. And this guy was a data scientist. And I don't know if it's still online. I mean, it was just mind blowing. He put fisheye cameras in every room in his house and microphones. And he recorded every interaction with his baby, verbal interaction. And he had, gigs and gigs and gigs and gigs of data for the first 2.5, 3 years, right? Every day, every second. And then he went through all the data, and he went back, and he called it, there's a video called The Birth of a Word. And I think it was the word water. And so when the baby's in a high chair in the kitchen and his mum's preparing dinner and using the sink, and she goes, water, water, and the baby goes, splashes it, like, and it goes, war, 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 like that. And over 2 years, war becomes water. And that's how we acquire a language.
Right.
Context, repetition, support.
Right.
Visual aids, emotional aids that create cognitive markers. Because she's building cognitive markers in that baby's head and reinforcing them with positivity, smiles, laughing, all that kind of stuff. But it's contextually in the kitchen. The tap has water coming out of it. So all of these. It's an amazing video. I would recommend everyone goes and finds it if it's still up. I don't know if it's still up.
I heard about the experiment. I remember reading about it.
And it made a huge impression on me. And I read lots of stuff by a woman called Dr. Cool, great name, Kuhl. Patricia Cool, who used to ram babies into MRI scanners and feed them language on headphones and shit like that. And there's photos of a baby with big headphones on, right? And her research was really, really interesting because it kind of deconstructed how we acquire language, and then also went on to talk about how, these elements of brain plasticity that children have, like, You know, in ELT, get this right. One of the maddest things in ELT that probably still exists, I don't know, is this thing called the critical period, right? Have you heard of the critical period?
No.
For decades, it still exists. I'm sure it does. Everyone will go on about the critical period. So they go, oh, well, kids learn language really easily. You know, you just stick them in the park with a few Italians or some Germans, and then they come back speaking Italian and German. And that's because they have massive brain plasticity and they don't give a shit, right? So they just go for it. And then they listen, and then they try, and then they fail, then they try again, and it's a laugh, and no one has a problem. And that's brain plasticity. But it stops around the age of 11. This was deemed the critical period. So that basically your brain, in a linguistic sense, cannot acquire a second language very easily after the age of 11 or 12 or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
But Patricia Kuhl's research kind of showed that, and it extended it into that, and we know this now because of research into old people, gerontocracy, all that kind of stuff, right? Is that brain plasticity lasts your whole bloody life, right? You can teach an old dog new tricks. No, seriously. And so this is a complete fallacy that the whole of ELT has been based on. That you have to go and hit the grammar to ram it into an older person's skull, right? Whereas that actually confuses the shit out of them. You're better off giving them a pint of lager and sitting them in a group of Italians.
Yeah.
You know, for a sustained period of time. Like, so this is the immersion method that when you go and live in a country like you did in Italy and stuff like that, you pick it up naturally. Immersion is natural language acquisition. Similar to Deb Roy's experiment with his baby, you know. So it's kind of mad that the whole of ELTs come out of this idea that we don't have brain plasticity beyond a certain age that allows us to acquire language. And we're still using that methodology. And the thing I had up my sleeve, I'm conscious of the time, I've been looking at my Bible of Global English written by Robert McCrum, former, I don't know if he's former, associate editor of Observer, the famous newspaper. Anyway, I thought, I wonder. This book that I introduced in the previous one is all about the massive global contribution of English to the success of the world and everyone in it. And it doesn't actually say that. It says how the English language became the world's language, and it's very smug and corporate. But I thought I'll look in the index, right, and see what's in the index, because it's a proper book. They must have done a proper index, and they must have listed everything. And so I thought, I'll look in the index for certain words. I love an index, don't you? And and I thought, here we go. I thought, okay. And then, he goes on 1.5 billion learners globally of English, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, the index, there's no reference to the word practice. Okay. There's no reference to methods or methodology. There's no reference to teaching. There's no reference to TEFL or ELT. Okay. And this whole book's about the English language and learning English in a global world, right? There's one reference to the British Council. So there's no discussion of method, efficacy, cost, or accessibility of English language. Well, there's one, and I'll go to that in a minute. This was written in 2010, so it's still the same today. It's just assumed, and this is what I've thought with all my working life, it's just assumed there's one way to learn English, and it's vanilla and uniform across the world. You sit in a classroom with a teacher bashing grammar. You know, the only difference now is we've got some AI chatbots and things are changing a bit, but they're still screwing that up, right, in my opinion. But isn't that amazing? This whole book, and there's no reference to any of that because it's assumed. It's just assumed. And this is why, you get asked stuff, and Judy and me, people Like, I don't know if have you ever had a student, someone who's wanted to pay you to help them? I have. This is funny. And you go, yeah, okay, I'll work with you. Right, I want you to download this, read that, pick one, we'll have a chat.
Mm.
And they go, oh, no, I want to do it this way. I want you to teach me.
Yeah.
And you go, well, I'm the wrong person. Bye. That's what I say,
Yeah.
because that doesn't work.
I tried to convince a girl. She was very, very strong-minded, and I was really intrigued. I said, "Listen, I'm fascinated by you because you've got this really strong character. You really think you know what you're talking about."
Yet you're here talking to me, going, "Help me." What the hell's that about?
So unfortunately, we weren't able to get very far together because she just wasn't prepared to accept that I was able to help her.
But that's what I'm talking about. That's the indoctrination, the conditioning. That's how deep it is.
That's a university student.
Yeah.
Very, very academic and totally unable to accept the possibility that there was another way.
Yeah. And do you know why? It's because all their life, when they've done English courses and maybe failed or, had to do resit or, didn't do as well as they thought or couldn't speak, especially couldn't speak comfortably, and they were given an assessment by their teacher, they were told, well, you could work a bit harder.
Oh, terrible, isn't it?
You could work a bit harder. You could understand grammar a bit better.
Mm-mm.
So basically the blame for their failure, their repeated failures, is put on them, not the system.
Exactly.
Which is outrageous.
Counterproductive.